I always knew that ambition came with sacrifices, but I never imagined those sacrifices would include us. My wife Emily had dreams bigger than either of us, visions that reached beyond the cozy apartment we shared, the weekend getaways and the quiet dinners I cherished. When she was offered a position abroad, a year-long fellowship in Europe, I supported her wholeheartedly. I told her to go to chase her dreams, convinced that love could endure distance. I thought I was strong, that we were strong. The day she left was quiet. No grand goodbyes, just a suitcase, a few tight hugs and promises whispered with trembling voices. "It's just a year," she said. "We'll be fine. We'll talk, we'll visit, we'll—" I cut her off, forcing a smile, pretending my chest wasn't tightening with the weight of fear. I waved her off, watched her disappear into the cab, and told myself I was proud. I was supportive. I was understanding. The first few months passed with what I called grace. We video called, texted, sent photos, small tokens of our connection. But slowly, subtly, the distance began to erode the intimacy I had assumed was unshakable. Calls became shorter. Messages took longer to answer. Emily's words, once warm and familiar, felt distant, like echoes from a life that was no longer mine. I tried to brush it off, to tell myself that career demands were demanding, that she was under pressure, that it wasn't personal. But deep down, I felt the first pangs of isolation. 6 months in, I realized the pattern. The late-night texts weren't from me. They were from others. The excitement she once shared with me was now reserved for her new colleagues, for people she barely knew, for experiences she chose to live without me. I wasn't angry yet. I was heartbroken. I tried to reach her, to talk, to reconnect, but each attempt felt like knocking on a door that had been silently locked. Her career had become a shield, a wall, a reason that kept her from returning to the life we had built. And then a year later she came back. Emily returned, suitcase in hand, smiling, apologetic, as though time could erase the absence, as though love could be resumed like a paused video. She expected warmth, understanding, forgiveness. She expected me to welcome her with open arms and pretend that the distance, the betrayal, the loneliness had never existed. But I had changed. The man who waited, who hoped, who endured was gone. In his place was clarity, a quiet resolve that refused to be swayed by charm or remorse. The moment Emily stepped through the door, I felt the weight of a year settle between us. Her eyes searched mine, seeking forgiveness, reassurance, a return to what once was. But I had spent 12 months learning a painful truth. Absence changes people, and sometimes, love alone isn't enough to bridge the gap. I didn't move to greet her. I didn't reach for her hand. I simply watched, allowing the silence to stretch, letting her realize that I had been living through a year of emptiness while she pursued her ambitions. She tried to fill the space with words, explaining the late nights, the pressure, the networking dinners, the meetings that lasted until dawn. Each excuse felt hollow, rehearsed, a mask for the reality I had known but hoped wasn't true. I had endured her absence, yes, but I had also learned resilience. I had rebuilt my routines, my sense of self, and my world without her constant presence. The life we had shared was now a memory, beautiful perhaps, but irretrievable. Emily's attempts at reconciliation intensified over the week. She cooked, cleaned, tried to slip back into familiar routines as though the distance had been a minor detour, not a year-long chasm. She planned dates, thoughtful gestures, even casual touches meant to evoke nostalgia. But with every attempt, I felt more certain of my decision. Love, I realized, is not simply about longing or desire. It is about presence, attention, and respect. She had neglected those essentials for 12 months, leaving her promises empty and our connection weakened beyond repair. The breakthrough, or perhaps the breaking point, came one evening when she said, softly, almost pleading, "I came back for us. Can't we start over?" Her voice trembled, and for a moment the man I had been, the one who loved her unconditionally, wanted to reach out, to give in, to believe that her return could heal what had been broken. But I didn't. I simply shook my head. I realized that her choice had been made long before she returned. She had chosen career over us, and no apology could rewrite that decision. I told her gently but firmly that our marriage, our life as it had been, was over. Not out of anger, not out of spite, but out of clarity. I had spent a year proving to myself that I was whole, capable, and resilient. And I had learned that sometimes walking away is not failure. It is self-preservation. an acknowledgement that love must be mutual, consistent, and present to survive. The day I finally said it aloud, that our marriage couldn't resume, the apartment felt emptier than it ever had during her absence. Emily's eyes welled with tears, a mixture of regret, frustration, and disbelief. She tried to argue, to reason, to remind me of the vows we had exchanged, of the love we once shared. But I was calm, steady, unshaken. I had spent the past year rebuilding not just my daily life, but my understanding of what love truly requires: presence, consistency, and mutual commitment. She pleaded, promising to prioritize us, to never let her career come between us again. But promises are meaningless without evidence, and the absence of a year had left its mark. I could no longer ignore the emotional distance, the shattered routines, the nights I had spent alone, waiting for a partner who was physically and emotionally elsewhere. Her return, no matter how heartfelt, could not erase the months of neglect, the broken trust, or the painful realization that she had chosen ambition over us. I walked her to the door, my hands steady, my heart resolute. Outside, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the personal devastation within those walls. Emily's voice called my name one last time, hesitant, almost desperate. I didn't turn around. I didn't respond. My decision had been made not in anger, but in clarity. I was reclaiming my life, my autonomy, and my self-respect. The person I had been waiting, hoping, forgiving was gone. In his place stood someone who understood that love, when neglected, becomes unsustainable. Later that night I sat alone, reflecting on the past year. The lessons were harsh but invaluable. I had learned that love cannot survive on promises alone, that absence and neglect create gaps impossible to bridge with apologies, and that personal growth sometimes requires letting go, even when the heart still aches. Emily's return had been a test I hadn't asked for, but one I had to pass to prove my own strength, resilience, and capacity to honor myself. By the morning, I had made peace with the decision. I would move forward, carrying the memories of love, but leaving behind the pain, the disappointment, and the neglect. Some doors, once closed, cannot be reopened without causing further damage. And sometimes the hardest choice, the choice to let go, is the one that ultimately grants freedom, clarity, and the chance to rebuild life on your own terms. As I stepped into the day, breathing deeply, I understood that losing Emily wasn't the end. It was the beginning. The beginning of a life defined not by compromise at the cost of self-worth, but by honesty, presence, and the unwavering commitment to never allow someone else's priorities to overshadow my own. That year of absence had taught me more about love, loss, and strength than I could have imagined. And now I was ready to live fully, unapologetically, and with clarity.